Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Hamda Saqib. Today we are going to discuss lecture number 8. The last lecture review was comprised of principles of psychology, in which we studied about learning, operant conditioning, classical conditioning, shaping and modeling, conditioning principles in real life, use of learning theory against bad habits. Today's lecture outline includes metacognition, memory, stages and types of memory, anatomy of memory, biochemistry of memory, methods to improve memory, and the pathological changes which cause a problem in memory making. What is metacognition? Metacognition is thinking about how we think. It refers to the knowledge people have about their own thought process. आसान अल्फाज में मेटाकॉग्निशन से मुराद ये है जो हम सोच रहे हैं वो क्या सोच रहे हैं, इस चीज़ की समझ होना मेटाकॉग्निशन कहलाता है. इट इज़ द थिंकिंग अबाउट हाउ वी थिंक. इट refers to the knowledge people have about their own thought process. And metacognition is essentially present in human beings because whenever we think something, we relate to it being as good or bad. While in animals, they don't relate things to being good or bad, they just do as they wish. But in humans, we have a conscious in our mind that whenever we think, we always associate it with something beneficial or harmful or whatsoever. So that is how we think about how we are thinking at the moment. Metacognitive awareness is not seen in children as they develop later in life. That is why, whenever a child does something wrong, he does not know that he has done something wrong, and then his parents tell him what is the difference between good and bad, and that kind of awareness develops later in life. Good learners are highly aware of their own thinking, use this information to regulate their learning. Examples: what is my goal? How motivated I am. In metacognition, the goal is to get an A on the next week's exam, so the motivation level is high. So the person is thinking that what is my goal? How motivated am I? And he is aware of the fact that he needs to get an A on the grade, so that is why he sets his goal according to that. So he thinks about his own thinking. What do I already know about the topic? Assess prior knowledge. For example, the person has already studied something, but he is thinking about what he will think, meaning he will assess himself that do I have a good grasp on knowledge on the certain topic in which exam I have to appear. So he thinks or assesses about his own thinking. Memory. The most extraordinary phenomena in the natural world. Our brains are modified and reorganized by our experiences. Our interaction with physical world, our sensory experiences, our perception and our actions change us continuously and determine what we are able to perceive, remember, understand and become. All our higher mental functions, for example, speech, thinking, perception, mood, and judgment, as well as psychomotor skills and consciousness of surrounding, is based on the phenomena of memory. Stages of memory. Human memory resembles a computer in that it consists of an information processing system that has three separate stages, which are encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding. Sensory information is received and coded or transformed into neural impulses that can be processed further or stored for later use. For example, when you touch a hot object, you make your hand move away from it in a very quick motion. So it happened that your skin has temperature sensation receptors in the skin, and whenever they received a hot object on them, the neural impulses were formed which were transmitted to your brain, and your brain signaled your body to move your hand away from it. So, whenever you have a hot object in your scenario, you will not touch it. For example, a boiling kettle or a boiling vessel, you will have in your memory that I will not touch it because if I do so, it will cause burns on my skin. So what happened that the sensory information was transformed into neural impulses which were processed further or stored for later use. Similarly, when you see something, the light rays enter your eyes. For example, you are able to appreciate different things in your scenario. For example, the sun, the clouds, the grass, the flowers. So, what happened was the light rays, when they entered your eye, they reached the retina, and the retina has certain visual receptors which change those light rays into neural impulses, which were then transmitted to your brain. Storage. Like a computer program, the encoded information should be stored into memory system. Some bits of information are stored briefly and used once and then discarded. Others like telephone number are used frequently and stored on permanent basis. So this was stage 2. In stage 3, just like a computer, when we recall or bring a memory into consciousness we have retrieved, this recall process is known as memory retrieval, meaning you try to recall what you have stored in your memory. Those were the stages of memory. These are the types of memory. Always remember the differences between these two whenever you are asked to solve a short question on such topics. So, the types of memory include sensory memory, short term memory, long term memory, and rehearsal. Very important flowchart. The human memory comprises of three types. Sensory memory, which lasts for less than 1 second. Very important MCQ. Short term memory or working memory lasts for less than 1 minute. Long term memory, which is lifetime memory, is comprised of two types: implicit memory and explicit memory. Implicit memory is the memory which is stored in your unconscious, and explicit memory which is stored in your conscious working. Implicit memory is also known as procedural memory, in which you solve certain skills or tasks. For example, there is a carpenter. He does not need to remember every day how to cut wood. It is present in his unconscious memory that he has a certain skill that he will use on daily basis. So that kind of a memory is stored in his unconscious mind, that he knows how to cut the wood. Or for example, a gardener knows how to uh, put seeds into the ground, or to cut off the grass, or do certain things that are included in skills. For example, a goldsmith or a blacksmith. Such type of memory is present in your unconscious mind, and you don't need to remember it on daily basis. It is a type of a procedural memory. The other type was explicit memory, which is a conscious memory. Explicit memory is also known as a declarative memory, which comprises of facts and events. It has further two types: episodic memory and semantic memory. Episodic memory comprises of events and experiences once one person faces. For example, you were in a on a road standing, and you saw a certain car accident which was very unfortunate. So that was stored in your episodic memory. You had a event or experience stored in your memory which was a conscious memory at that time, and such a memory is known as a episodic memory, which is a further type of a explicit memory. And the other type of explicit memory is semantic memory. Semantic memory comprises of facts and concepts. For example, you know that the water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. The capital of Pakistan is Islamabad. Such types of facts and figures are a part of your semantic memory, which is a further type of explicit memory. So you should remember this flow chart by heart. A lot of MCQs and short questions can come out from it. Sensory memory. It is a storage of sensory events such as sight, sounds, and taste with no further processing and interpretation. Because many stimuli are received at one single time, so sensory memory appears to last briefly about half to 1 second. That is less than 1 second. So you see, you are in present in a certain situation in which you saw the particular car accident, but in that particular scenario a lot of other things were happening as well, but your mind was only focused on the certain event that took place. Other cars were also going on that road. Certain other events were also taking place. For example, you don't even remember what road it was. You don't remember what time of the day it was. You don't remember how many trees were present on that certain road or how many shops were open, because that kind of a memory was discarded by your brain, because your brain were focused on a single certain event that was taking place and caught your attention. So many stimuli received at one single time, so sensory memory appears to last briefly for 1.5 to 1 second. Short term memory. Not everything is seen or heard is kept in memory. Short term memory of brief but longer than sensory information. Selective attention determines what information moves on to short term memory. The difference between short term and long term memory is that short term memory lasts for less than a minute. For example, there was selective attention that you were going on a road and you saw that there was a certain car behind you that was pressing the horn again and again, and then you moved out of the sight. So you remember that horn keeping being pressed by the driver behind you, and then you forgot about it later on, that in a certain time of the day there was a time that you heard a horn and you moved out of the way. Obviously you listened to the horn, you acted upon it and then moved out of the way. So that kind of a memory lasted for less than 1 minute. It was greater than sensory memory, but it was lesser than long term memory, because certain types of memory need not to be inculcated into your long term memory. So sensory memory lasts then less than 1 second, because in cases of sensory memory you don't give any sort of attention to the stimuli, because a lot of stimuli are present in a scenario. But in short term memory, there was a selective attention which determines what kind of memory moves to short term memory. So it lasts for less than 1 minute. Unless the information is important, it is quickly dumped from short term memory and is lost forever. Like the example I told you, that there was a driver behind you who was pressing the horn to move you out of the way. So you moved out of the way and then you forgot about it. So it was quickly dumped from your short term memory. Short term memory can be stored in the form of images, but more often they are stored as sounds, especially in recalling words and letters. It acts as a temporary storehouse of information. At the same time, it provides working memory, where we do much of our thinking, dialing a phone number, doing a mental arithmetic, and remembering a shopping list. So you should remember that short-term memory is also known as a working memory as well, because certain type of memory helps you to work at that specific moment. For example, again that example being given, then the driver was pressing the horn behind you and you moved out of the way. So it make you work at that specific time and you moved out of the way. For example, your mother told you to bring certain grocery items from the market, and then you remembered it, you brought it, and then you forgot about it. So it was also a part of your short term memory. Similarly, when you are present at the grocery store, you made an arithmetic problem out of it and you added all the prices in your mind, and then you gave the money to the shop owner and left. So certain type of memory was less than 1 minute, because it need not to be inculcated into your long term memory because it is not important. So it helped you to work out at that particular time, but it is not so much important to be inculcated into your long term memory. Short term memory prevents our mind from collecting useless names, dates, and phone numbers. For example, a TV commercial running at the background as your friend he reads you his notes. Do you remember the words of the TV ad? No, probably because of selective attention. For example, you and your friend were doing a group study and there was a certain TV ad